Which lessons? So we are just talking about Python database communication, right? So this is what we are talking about. And yesterday we are seeing like how to install Python's, MySQL database. So just see how to install MySQL database here. So first, so I try to remove this MySQL, which is already there. So you can download this MySQL installer. So you can download MySQL download. So MySQL installer is there. Just search for MySQL download. Right here already I placed. So development.mysql. You can click on this. And after that, there is two installer. One is web community and one more is installer community. Installer community means first it will download the complete setup. So this will take like 435 MB. But here setup will be downloaded and installed from web. You try to select web community. Just click on this web community. After clicking on web community, so don't select any login and sign up. Just click on no thanks, just start my download. So MySQL installer is downloaded. Now click on this, run this. So once you run this, it will try to install the database. See, all these are already there, but you just click on add. Install MySQL server. What you do is install MySQL server. Install MySQL server. Then next is there's no applications you require. So you don't require any other things. And if it is MySQL connector, you can install MySQL connector, but it's not available here. So just select MySQL server and then click on next. Okay, just click on next again. Okay, just click on execute. So click on next, execute, start installing here. Now just click on next here. And just click on next. Nothing you have to, don't do any changes here. Just click on next and enter the root password. Root is a username, and I try to give the root password also root. Password of root is I'm giving root only. You have to remember this. What password you have given. Okay, now just click on next. Yes. So installation is completed here. Okay. So after that, next is, if you want to work with the MySQL, you have to open MySQL command line client. What do you have to do? You have to open MySQL command line client. If you want to work with MySQL, open MySQL command line client. Just to search for MySQL command line client. Okay. So enter the password. Just now we enter the password as what? Root. Okay. So this is how you work with the MySQL. First, I'm telling you how to work with the MySQL, and then I'll tell you how Python communicate with MySQL database. Okay. So what you do is just search for MySQL command line client. Search for MySQL command line client. Enter the password. Okay. Enter the password here. Now select the properties and font. So I just increase so that you can see here. Okay. Once this is done, so every database software, every database software, every database software, okay, every database software So every database software or application understand one language. Every database software or application understand one language called which one? SQL. So what is SQL is? SQL stands for structured query language. What is SQL stands for here is structured query language. It is a standard used by database applications for manipulating what here? Data. Okay, SQL stands for structured query language. It is a standard used by database applications for manipulating what here? Data. Okay, SQL, structured query language. Any database, like if you want to work with Oracle understand one language called what? SQL. MySQL understand what? SQL. Okay, any database, SQL server understand what? SQL. So it's a language which is common for all database applications. Now using SQL language, you can able to manipulate what here? Data. Using SQL language, you can able to manipulate what? Data. So SQL commands are divided into different categories. The first one is called as DDL, which stands for data definition language. So what is this data definition language is having? Create, alter, drop. The second one is DML, which stands for data manipulation language, like inserting, updating, and deleting. Okay, SQL commands are classified into different categories. Okay, first one is called DDL, which is called data definition language, like create, alter, and drop. Second one is called DML, which is called as data manipulation language, that is insert, update, delete. Next one is DRL, data retrieval language or data query language. What is that? Select. The next one is DCL, which stands for data control language. And there is a TCL, which stands for transaction control language. So it means SQL commands are classified into these many categories. But first thing what you have to do here is you have to create the database. Okay, where the data will be stored in database, where the data will be stored inside database. So first step, what you have to do is you have to create one database. So I'm creating a database saying create database. How can you create a database saying create database and database name? Okay. So suppose I just create database with DB7AM. So what is the name of the database? DB7AM means where I'm storing all my data in DB7AM. This is the first step. What is the first step is creating database. And how you are creating a database using create database and followed by database name. So create database and database name. And what is the name of the database here? DB2. Okay, but here I created database with what name? DB7AM. Okay, or if we'll see create database, DB2 will say this is already there. So DB2 is already there. And how to open database or activate database? You can open or activate database using which command? Use. Okay, already we created one database like DB7AM, and there is one more database is already there. What is the name of that? DB2. So all these are databases, right? Now I'm using. So use What is the name of the database here? DB2. Okay. I use a database called DB2. So it means now, currently I'm in which database? DB2. Currently I'm in which database here? DB2. The database in which I'm working is a DB2. So current database is what here? DB2 is a current database. So use and it followed by use it followed by database name. Now once a database is created, within the database where the data will be stored in tables. Within database where the data is stored in table. But how you are creating a table? You are creating a table by saying create table and table name, column name and data type. Column is nothing but field name and data type. Column name and data type. Column name and what is that? Data type. So here you have a different data types like integer for numeric, long is also for numeric, float is also for numeric, varchar is for string, and there is a date as well as what type. So all these are which data types? MySQL data types. All these are which data types? MySQL data types. Now I'm trying to create a table. Okay, I'm trying to create a table here. So create table. What is the name of the table here? EMP. Because I want to store whose details? Employee details. So where the data will be stored in table in the form of rows and columns. Column hold the value. So employee number, employee name and salary. So what is my column name? Employee number. Some integer 5. I'll say primary key. Primary key means it is not null as well as unique. Employee number should be required and it should be unique. Employee number is required and it is what here? Unique. So that is primary key. The next one is employee name, which is varchar 2. Varchar. Varchar is nothing but string. Now what is the size of this here? 20. Employee name. And it is having one more field called salary, which is float 10 comma 2. Total width is a 10 and 2 are decimal places. Okay, total width is a 10 and 2 are what here? Decimal places. What is the total width here? 10, but 2 is what here? Decimal places. How many decimal places here? 2 decimal places. Yeah, that is create table, table name, number and primary key, employee name, varchar, and salary like this. So once the table is created, okay, if you want to see the structure of the table, you can use a command called describe. What is the name of the table here? EMP. So employee table is having how many columns? 3 columns. And these columns also called as which one? Fields. How many fields are there? 3 fields: employee number, employee name, and salary. So how can you insert? Now, if you want to insert the data, you'll try to execute which commands? DML commands. So DML stands for data manipulation language. So data manipulation language commands. These commands are classified into how many categories? 3. One is insert, update, and one more is what? Delete. If you want to insert values into a database table, you have to use which command? Insert command. Now insert is having two syntaxes. Insert into table name values. You want to insert values in all the columns. Insert into table name. And if you want to insert values into selected columns, then use a column names and values followed by values. Now, if you want to insert the values, you are trying to execute. Insert into what is the table name? EMP values, employee number, name of the employee, and this is what here? Salary. Insert into EMP values. This is employee number. This is the name of the employee, and this is what here? Salary. Now I try to insert how many rows here? 2 rows. This is first employee and this is what? Second employee. I try to insert 2 rows. Okay, but how you are inserting it using which command? Insert command. Then how to retrieve the data? I'm just giving idea about how to work with MySQL and how you insert the data, retrieve SQL commands. So there is a command called select. This command is used to read data from database table. This command is used to read data from database table. So you have a multiple syntaxes. You can say select star from. If I say select star from EMP, this will retrieve the complete table information. So EMP table is having how many rows? 2 rows. With how many columns here? 3 columns. Employee number, employee name, and salary. 3 columns are there. Syntax 2 is if you want to retrieve selected columns, like suppose I'm saying selector employee number, comma salary from EMP. Now this will select how many columns here? 2 columns. The first column is employee number and second column is what here? Salary. So if you want to retrieve only selected columns, just give the column name. If you want to only selected rows, then you try to give the where condition, select star from EMP where employee number equal to 101. Now this will get the details of employee number 101. If I'm saying select star from EMP where, okay, where employee number equal to 102, you get the details of second employee, okay, 101, 102, right? Suppose if I'm writing select star from EMP where employee number equal to 103, but is it any employee with 103s exists? No. Then it will not select any rows. It is written what here? Empty set. Because there is no rows with that. Then if you want to retrieve the data, you are using these commands, right? If you want to replace the values, if you want to replace the values, okay, if you want to replace the values, you are replacing the values. If you want to replace the values, if you want to replace the values, then you are trying to use which command? Update command. Now this command is used to replace values or update what? Values. Update table name set column name equal to value. So where it followed by what? Condition. Okay, suppose I want to update. Now this is EMB table. Now suppose I want to update the salary of employee 101. How can I update the salary of employee 101? Update EMB set salary equal to some salary place I want to increase with 1000. So where employee number equal to 101. So what happened now? One row is matched and changed. If you want to see that, just write here select star from EMP. Now the salary is updated from 50,000 to what? 51,000. Salary is updated from 50,000 to what? 51,000. So that is updating salary. Update table name. Okay, update table name set. Update table name set column name equal to value where there is a condition. That is update command. Update EMB set salary plus 5,000 where employee number is given like that. If you want to delete it, you are using a command called what? Delete. So this command is used to remove or delete rows from database table. This command is used for remove, delete from EMP where employee number equal to 1 or 2. So what happened here? This particular row is what? Deleted. If you want to delete anything from database table, you are trying to use a command called which one? Delete. So it means any project you develop, your project performs how many operations on the database? Okay, whenever you develop any project, your project performs how many operations on the database? Okay, it performs 4 operations on the database. How many operations it perform? 4 operations. That 4 operations you call it as what? Crude operations. That 4 operations you call it as crude operations. That 4 operations you call it as crude operations. That is inserting, updating, okay, inserting, updating, deleting, and one more is what? Retrieving or reading. So create, C means create, which is called as insert, R means retrieving, U means updating, D means what? Delete. Any project you develop, you perform how many operations? 4 operations like inserting, updating, deleting, and reading. But you are trying to insert it by using which command? Insert command. Okay, you are retrieving it using which command? Select command. You are updating it using which command? Update command. You are deleting it by using which command? Delete command. It means if my Python program want to insert data into a database table, my Python program should send which command? Insert command to the database. If my Python program want to retrieve the data from database, okay, Python program should send which command to the database? Select command. Because database understand which language? SQL. Okay, so yes, if my Python program want to insert data, then it should send insert command. If my Python program want to retrieve the data, then it should send which command? Okay, select command. Now, this is Python program. This is Python program. This is a Python program. And this is your database software. This is which database software? MySQL database, right? So in MySQL database, you created database 1, database 2 or database 1, something you created. And within this, you created one table called which one? EMP. Now, my Python program want to retrieve the data from which table? EMP table. Okay, then Python program should send which command? Okay, which command to the database? Which command to the database? Insert command. If Python program want to retrieve the data from this table, I should send which command to the database? Select command. If Python program want to update the data, then Python program should send which command? Update command. Okay. If Python program want to delete the data, then it should send which command? Delete command. But how Python program can send all this to the database? Okay. How Python program communicate with the MySQL database? For that, there is one library you require. For that, you are using one library or one API. For that, you are using one library, you are using one library or you are using one API. So API, which stands for application programming, API stands for application programming interface. API stands for application programming interface, right? Or you require some library. Okay. Yes. Now what is that library is? Now how Python program communicate with MySQL database? How Python program communicate with MySQL database? Okay, for that you required one library. For that you required one library. What is the name of the library? MySQL connector Python. What is the name of the library? MySQL connector Python. MySQL connector Python is a library. Install this library, MySQL connector Python. So MySQL connector Python is a Python library or package. What is this? Is a Python library or package which is used to communicate with which database? MySQL database. Okay, you are using this to communicate with which database? MySQL database. But when install the Python software, you don't get this library. You have to install this library. By using which command you have to install this library? Pip. Go to the command prompt. Okay, go to the command prompt here. And here you can write pip install MySQL. MySQL what? Connector. MySQL connector what? Python. If it is already there, yes, it said requirement already satisfied. Means this library is already installed or not? Yes. If you want to see that, you can say pip. Pip is a command which is used to manage the packages. If you want to install the packages, okay, if you want to remove the packages, you can use a pip command. So pip, it followed by what? Install. Pip and command is install. Which library are you installing? MySQL connector Python. So if I want to see the list of libraries which are already installed, you can say pip list. So there is already MySQL connector Python is there or not? Yes. So MySQL connector Python 8.0.28. So this is the package the already installed. If it is not installed, it will install. But it is already installed, right? Okay. So you have to say pip install MySQL connector Python. If it is available, okay. If it is not available, it will install. If it is already installed, then you'll get this message. What is that message? Requirement already satisfied. Means this package is already installed or this library is already installed. Okay. The next one is once you install this package, how can you verify is it installed or not? How can you verify is it installed or not? Just open ideally and here you try to import. What is that library? MySQL dot. MySQL is a package. MySQL is a package and connector is a sub package. Package means folder. Within this folder, there is another folder called which one? Connector. Okay. So if you type this, if you don't get any error, it means this library is available. If you get error, means this library is not installed. Okay. If it is not installed, you'll get the error. If you are not getting any error, means it is already installed properly, right? Import MySQL is a package and connector is what here? Subpackage. MySQL is a package and connector is a subpackage. MySQL is a package and connector is a subpackage. You must know this. MySQL is a package and connector is a subpackage. Okay, right? Now, once this is done, what is the next thing? Okay, so here Python is one program. See, Python is one. So this is one. Python is one and database is another, right? So in order to have a communication, first what you have to do is you have to establish. First thing what you have to do is you have to establish connection. What is the first step? You have to open the connection between Python program and what? Database application. So what are the basic steps to communicate with the database is the first step is you have to establish. Okay, you have to establish which one? Connection. Okay, you have to establish connection because database is always which one? Server. And your Python program is which one? Client. Always programming language or client, right? So Python program to communicate with the MySQL database, first step is you have to establish connection. Python program should connect to which one? MySQL database. First step is because you try to send all SQL statements within connection. You send all SQL statements within connection. Python program want to send insert command. Then it will send insert command within connection. Python program want to send update command. It will send the update command within connection. Okay, Python program want to retrieve the data. Then it will send select command to the database. But first, you have to establish what? Connection. First step is establishing connection. So what are the basic steps to communicate with the database? First step is, what is the first step is, you have to import what? Library. Okay, because this is a library which you are using to communicate with what? Database. So what is the first step? You have to import the library. What is the first step? You have to import the library. What is the first step? You have to import the library. What is the second step? Establish connection to what? Database. Okay. Then what is the third step? Creating cursor. Okay. How you will be sending SQL statements and where the result will be stored is within the cursor. Okay. You create a cursor and this cursor hold the address of the connection. This cursor hold the address of which one? You create a cursor and this cursor hold the connection of what? This cursor holds the address of connection. Suppose if you want to send any SQL statement, you send SQL statement using cursor and cursor uses connection and send SQL statement, and that SQL statement is executed by database and then it will return the result into one object. It will return the result into one object and where the result is written in cursor. So cursor is having a result of executed SQL statement. Means using cursor you send SQL statement and SQL statement get executed by which one? Server, and then return that result into which one? Cursor. So that that result can read by which program? Python program. So cursor is used. See, cursor is just like a cursor is object which hold the result of executed query. Cursor is object which hold result of executed query. So query, what is a query here? Insert, update, delete, select. All these are the queries, right? Now these queries you send to what? Database using the cursor, and database will execute those commands, and after executing commands, it should return the result or not? Yes. But where it is returning the result? It is returning the result into one object. What is that object? Cursor object. Okay. And sending SQL statements using cursor and reading result from what? Cursor. And finally, you have to close what? Connection. So what are the basic steps? First one is import library. Second step is establish connection to a database. And third step is create the cursor. And fourth step is sending SQL statement using cursor. And fifth one is reading result from cursor. And sixth one is closing what? Connection. So what is the first step here? Import library. What is a library here? So import MySQL is what here? Package. But connector is what here? Sub package. Actually, this is sub package. But some people say that, okay, connector is what? Module. So MySQL is a package and connector is what here? Module. And this module provides the functions to connect it to what here? Database. Just see here. MySQL is a package. MySQL is a package and connector is a module. MySQL is a package and connector is a module. MySQL is a package and connector is a module that connects to the database. Okay, now second one is establishing connection to what here? Database. Establishing connection to a database. Establishing connection to a database is nothing but creating one session. Okay, and all SQL statements are executed within session. Okay, so session is nothing but it will create one logical database for every client. And whenever you send SQL statements, right, all these SQL statements are executed within session of that particular client. Once you say commit, so logical database is temporary. Logical database is what? Temporary. So once you say commit, that changes will be reflected to what? Physical database. For every client, it will create one connection. Okay, one session. Now Python program, send insert command, delete command, update command, select command by using which one? Connection. But connection is used by the cursor. So how can you establish connection? You can say mysql.connector.connect. So MySQL is a package and connector is a module, and connect is what here? Function. So connect is a predefined function which is used to establish connection to what? Database. And this function returns which object? MySQL connection object. This function returns which object here? MySQL connection object. So what is the name of the function here? Connect. If you want to establish connection to a database, You are trying to use the function called which one? Connect. So connect will establish connection to a database. Connect will connect will establish connection to a database. Sorry. Okay, right now there is a connect function. Now this connect function will establish connection to what your database. Now your connect is a predefined function. What is a connect here is a predefined function which is used to establish connection to what your database. Is a predefined function which establishes connection to a database. And this function returns which object here? MySQL connection object. After connecting, it returns which object? MySQL connection object. After connecting, it returns which object here? MySQL connection object. So the syntax is MySQL dot connector dot. What is the name of the function here? Connect. So followed by database and username, and what is that? Password. Okay, username and password. For example, here, what I'm saying, import. Okay, import MySQL dot. What is the name of this connector? Now I try to establish MySQL dot connector dot connect. What is the name of the database? DB2. What is a MySQL database username? Root. And what is the password? Yes. You can give database. Keyword arguments also you can give. Database. And this is what here? User. And this is what here? Password. Database, user, and one more is a password. Then I display the message saying that connection what? Established. Then I try to print connection. Then I call main here. So once you run this, you can see connection established. And what is the name of this connection object? Okay, C MySQL connection object. What is the name of the object? C MySQL connection object. So connect function is returning which object? MySQL connection object. Connect function is returning which object? MySQL connection object. So once you established connection, okay, now connection is established, right? Once the connection is established, once you get the connection, now CN is holding connection of what? MySQL database. CN is holding a connection of what? MySQL database. CN is holding address of which connection? MySQL database connection, right? So once you establish connection, using this connection, what you can do? You can send SQL statements. Using this connection, what you can send? SQL statements. But for sending SQL statements, you have to create one object. What is that object you have to create? Cursor. For sending SQL statements, you have to create one object. What object you have to create? Cursor. Using cursor object, we can send SQL statements to what? Database. Using cursor object, we can send SQL statements to what? Database. After executing SQL statements or commands, the result gets stored inside which object? Cursor object. Using cursor object, we can send SQL statements to the database. After executing SQL statements or the commands, the result gets stored inside what? Cursor object. Okay. Then how you create a cursor object? Cursor object is given by which object here? MySQL connection object. So what is a cursor here? Method of MySQL connection object that will return which object? Cursor object. So what you are trying to write here? You are trying to write like this. Okay. Cursor C equal to connection dot. So cursor is a method of which one? Connection. Connection dot. What is the name of the method? Cursor. Connection dot. What is the name of the method? Cursor. Why we created cursor? We created cursor for sending which statements? SQL statements. If you want to insert, update or delete or retrieve, you send all these commands using which one? Cursor. And cursor uses what? Connection. And send SQL statements to what? Database. Okay. Cursor object is created. Cursor object is created. Okay. Cursor object is created. And if you want to print that cursor type is, you can see cursor object is created. And what is the name of the object? C MySQL cursor. But is it cursor is having anything? No. Cursor is what now? Empty. Why cursor is empty? Because are we executed any SQL statements? Are we executed any SQL statements? No. We have not executed any SQL statements. Are we executed any SQL statements? No, we have not executed any SQL statements, right? Not executed any SQL statements. Okay, right? Now this cursor is this cursor object is what here? Empty. This cursor object is what here? Empty. MySQL cursor object is what? Empty because we are not executed any commands. Now see here. Import MySQL connector and MySQL connector dot connect. We connected to database 2 and username of my MySQL is root and password is also root. Now I just displayed connection established, created cursor. You'll get the message cursor is created. This is the output, right? Okay. Now once the cursor is created, how can I send SQL statements to this database? How can I send SQL statements to the database? Now cursor provides the following methods. Cursor provides the following methods for executing SQL statements. Cursor provide the following methods for executing SQL statements. Cursor provide the following statements for executing SQL statements. For executing SQL statements. So Cursor provides the following methods for executing SQL statements. What is the first method? Execute. What is the second method? Execute many. What is the first method? Execute. What is the second method? Execute many. So Cursor provides the following methods for executing SQL statements. The first method is execute. Second method is what? Execute many. So what is the syntax of execute is? Execute, it followed by what here? SQL statements, and it followed by what? Parameters. So there are two types of SQL statements are there. One is a static SQL statement and one more is what? Dynamic SQL statement. What is a static SQL statement is you'll be sending a command to the database with values. You send the command to the database with values. With values. Okay, with values. That you call it as which statement? Static SQL. What is dynamic SQL statement is you send a SQL command to the database without values. See, when you send a SQL statement to the database, what your database will do, it will verify the syntax. Who will check the syntax of SQL command? Not Python. Because Python compiler understand Python language. Python compiler doesn't understand what? SQL. So who will check the syntax of the SQL? Database. So when you send this SQL command to the database, your database will verify, is the syntax of this SQL command is correct or not. So compilation will be done and then execution will be done. So static SQL statement means you'll be sending SQL statement to the database with values for compilation, with values. You will not give the values after compiling the command. You'll be giving the values before compiling the SQL command. That you call it as what? Static. But whereas in dynamic SQL statement, you send the SQL statement to the database for compilation without values. So after compiling, you'll give the values. After compiling SQL statement, you give the values. After compiling SQL command by the database, you give the values. That you call it as what? Dynamic. If the command is given with values for compilation, that is called what? Static. And if the command is given to the database for compilation without values, the values are given after compiling, that you call it as what? Dynamic. An SQL statement with values is called a static SQL statement. An SQL statement with parameters, arguments, or replacement fields or placeholders called dynamic SQL statements. For example, write a program to insert values into EMP table. I want to write a program to insert values into which table? EMP table. What is the first step? What is the first step? You have to establish connection. What is the second step? You have to create the cursor. Connection dot. You have to create the cursor. What is the third step? Cursor dot execute. Which command you are sending it? Insert. Insert into what is that table? EMP values. 1 or 2 is the employee number. Suresh is the employee name. Okay. Some 50,000 is what? Salary. You are sending command with values or without values? With values. Now, this is static or dynamic? Static. This is not a dynamic. It is what? Static. So execute method of cursor. Execute method of cursor. Send this SQL statement to what? Database. And database will compile this SQL command and execute and return result into which object? cursor object. What is the result it returns? Now all DML commands like insert, update, delete, all these commands will return the count. Like insert command returns how many rows are inserted. Update command returns how many rows are updated. Delete command returns how many rows are what? Deleted. Insert command returns how many rows are inserted. Update command returns how many rows are updated. Delete command returns how many rows are what? Deleted. So how can I get that count? Sum k equal to cursor dot row count. Then here is a property. Okay, I'll just write here format. Some k rows are inserted. And if you want to commit the changes, we'll say connection dot commit. So commit is by default it insert into session. It will insert into a session, and if you want to insert into a database, you have to say what? Commit. So which will make the changes permanently. I just run this code. You can see one row. How many rows inserted? One row inserted. See at the back end. Select star from what is the table? EM. So 1 or 2 is inserted or not? Yes. So if I run this program again, what will happen? Will it insert another row? Because 1 or 2 is already there, right? And employee number is a primary key. 1 or 2 is already there, and employee number is a primary key. 1 or 2 is already there, and employee number is a primary key, right? 1 or 2 is already there, and employee number is a primary key. If if I run one or two for key employee dot primary, because duplicates are not allowed, because I've taken employee number as a primary key, and primary key doesn't allow what? Duplicates. But I don't want to give the values within the command. I want to give the values at what? Runtime. I want to give the values at runtime. Then I have to define the placeholders or not. Yes. I have to write a command with parameters. I use the parameters like percentage %s, percentage %s, percentage %s. Now, is it this command is static or dynamic? Dynamic. It means, is it this command is having values? No. This command doesn't have values. Is it this command is having values? No, this command doesn't have any values. Now, this command is not a static. This command is what here? Dynamic. This command is not a static. This command is what here? Dynamic, right? Insert into EMP and you're saying values. Now, these are replacement fields here. Okay, but you have to replace this with some values or not? Yes. Now, for that, you'll try to define parameters. You have to define parameters as a list of parameters. Yes. You can say write a program to insert more than one employee. I want to insert more than one employee, but I want to make this as which one? Dynamic. Not as a static, but I want to make it as a dynamic. Now, what is my command? What is my command? Insert into what is a table? EMP values. How many placeholders? Percentages, percentages, percentages. These are called replacement fields. Then I'm saying while true. While true means this loop is executed how many times? Infinite times. I have to read what? Employee number. I have to read what? Employee number. I have to read what? Employee name. I have to read employee number. I have to read employee name. I have to read what? What is the next one? Salary. And these values you have to insert. Cursor dot execute. You are executing which command? CMD. What is CMD command? Insert. And to this command, you are sending parameters. What is this here? Parameters. Parameters. How many parameters? Employee number, employee name, and one more is what? Salary. So what is the value of this percentage is employee number. What is the value of this percentage is employee name. What is the value of this percentage is salary. Now these three fields are replaced with these three values or not? Yes. And execute. And execute. After that, I'm asking like whether you want to add another employee. Input. Add another employee. Whether you want to add another employee. If answer is equal to no, if answer is no, then what you have to do? Terminate. Before terminating, you save the changes by saying connection dot commit and terminate the loop using break. Then close the connection and then run this. Okay, save changes and terminate the loop. You're terminating this infinite loop by using which statement? Break statement. Run this. Employee number. What is this employee number? 103. Employee name and salary. Add another employee. Yes. Employee number. Employee name and salary. Add another employee. Yes. Employee number. Okay. Employee name and salary. Add another employee. No. So added how many employees here? 3. Just go to database and say select star from what is the table? EM. So 101, 102, 103, 104 and 10. So you can write a command with the parameters. You can write a command with the parameters. That parameters, generally you can call it as replacement fields. That parameters are what here? Replacement fields. So where you are replacing, okay, that is called replacement fields, where you are replacing each value, where you are replacing each value, right? You are replacing each value, each field you are replacing with, each field you are replacing with one value. Each field you are replacing with one value. So that is inserting. Now then how can you update it? I said, no, you must know these operations. These operations, generally you call it as CRUD operations. Okay, these operations, generally you call it as which operations? CRUD operations. That is inserting, updating, deleting, and what is that? Retrieving. Inserting, updating, deleting, and what? Retrieving. Yeah, we'll see otherwise how to update, delete, okay, and even other operations like retrieving it. And even I'll tell you how to communicate with which database, Oracle database also. But everything will be the same. Only this library get changes. Everything will be the same, but only one thing is changed. That is what? Library. But apart from that, everything is the same. Okay. Yeah, I'll send yesterday's and today's notes. Right. Yeah, tomorrow we'll see this. Like how to communicate with, how to do other operations on the database. Yesterday's notes and today's notes I'll send now. I mean, in the afternoon I'll send it. Okay. Right. We'll see tomorrow. Right. Yes. So after this database, we'll see GUI applications like working with Kinter and yes, working with the Kinter. Pandas notes also have to send it. Okay, I'll send Pandas. And after Kinter, maybe one topic is there. We'll try to finish it within this 2-3 classes, right? So we'll stop it here and we'll see tomorrow, right? Thank you.